Hi, guys. Bruce Kittle here with Pros Podcast. I am thrilled today with Mark and Amanda. And let me not botch it. Carrillo?
Carrillo.
All right. Excellent. And they are talking to me from Sacramento, California, I believe. And so, and I'm just a little bit of a story, if I can, to open. So, about 2 years ago, we did a vet every week for like 2 seasons, telling veteran stories and all those kind of things. And then we kind of changed up a little bit. And so this season, we haven't done as much of that. And then Amanda boldly, as she proceeds through the universe, which seems to be both of their natures, which is great, just kind of cold called me with an email and said, "Hey, we got some stuff going on up here, which we think fits into you guys' niche." And so anyway, we've been talking for a while. We're going to try to do this before the season. My schedule and other stuff just made it really tough. So we're glad to be able to do this. We've got some wrestling, which is those who follow the show know. My background is football wrestling in high school and college. So I was glad to hear a wrestling story, that wrestling's still out there. And it's a veteran story, which I think will be really endearing to folks. And it's a great story to hear. So we're looking forward to telling that. And then also the outreach piece, which we are always a proponent of. So they found new and innovative ways to do outreach with veterans in ways that lead toward healing and dealing with post-traumatic stress. So we're excited to do all of that. So really appreciate you guys being on the show and taking time to do this. And this is like right square in about every component of our mission. So thank you so much for being here. So, okay, without any further ado, let's see. I've got some background stuff. I don't know where you guys want to start. I'm good on anything. I wasn't going to just read your bio because there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. So Mark's former Marine Corps, and Amanda's just a current badass and kicks the shit out of folks as needed. So she can do whichever. But anyway, so maybe just give us a little bit of background. I know you guys are all longtime Sacramentoites, it sounds like, and tell us a
Sure.
little bit about your origin stories, just so we have a little background where you guys came from.
You want to go first?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, so I have a little bit of a background in wrestling. I'm the oldest daughter of 5 children. I have 4 younger brothers. They all wrestled and played football in high school. I wasn't allowed to wrestle, actually. My dad didn't let me, also a Marine. It wasn't really a girls' sport then, but I did compete in Olympic-style Taekwondo. I achieved my black belt at 14 and eventually coached and trained younger athletes as well. And through that avenue, I started getting into other sports. Once you kind of get your black belt, you want to go try other genres of martial arts. And so started looking at jujitsu and weapons training and stuff like that. And then that kind of led me to my job in college with Extreme Couture MMA, which is owned by Randy Couture. And he has the GI Foundation that does poker runs and fundraising and grants for veterans in the United States. And that's kind of where I got my volunteering in, and it really kind of started my passion for supporting the veteran community. My bachelor's is in healthcare administration with a minor in public health, and my entire senior project was based on the health disparities in the veteran population. And this was kind of about the time that the veteran suicide epidemic was starting to catch that mainstream attention with the media. And with Mark being a Marine Corps veteran, my dad was a veteran, both of my grandfathers are veterans, and my brother is a veteran. It was something that obviously I really needed to pay attention to because I didn't want to lose any of those people to that path.
For sure. Okay.
Good to go.
All right.
Mark, I was born in Redwood City, California, in the Bay Area. Lived in Antioch for elementary school, middle school, and then moved up to Sacramento in '99 when my parents separated. So been in Sacramento since '99, minus my 4 years in the Marine Corps, which I did in North Carolina at Camp Lejeune.
Okay. Well, there you go. And what about your brothers and sisters and family? Did you have military history in your family?
Yeah. All 4 of my grandparents are still alive, luckily. Very rare to say. 3 out of 4 of them were in the military. On my father's side, my grandfather, who was born in Mexico, was in the Mexican Army. And then when he came to the U.S., joined the U.S. Army, and then eventually even went in the U.S. Navy for 2 years. He is still alive at 97 years old in Arizona. Living life, 97 years old. He's slowing down, but he's alive and doing well. On my mother's side, my grandmother and grandfather were both in the U.S. Army. My grandmother was a nurse during the Korean War, and my grandfather was an enlisted Army. And then when he got out, was a school teacher at an elementary school in Burlingame for over 40 years.
Well, there you
So
go.
military, I knew I was going to the military at a very young age. Didn't know what branch at a young age, but I needed the structure, is what a lot of people told me as a young child. Uh, and once I hit high school, there was only one branch for me. It was the Corps. Um, and then 9/11 happened, right? All that kind of stuff happened as I was in high school. I think it was a sophomore, maybe. And so a lot of people my age went into the service, right? But because of that reason, I was already going in, so it was kind of a okay, let's go. I knew where I was going to end up within some time. So yeah.
Okay. Amanda, did he leave anything out?
I don't think so. He did a good job at summing up. We always kind of laugh about the serendipitous nature of things, like looking back on it, right? And so when I want to make him feel a little pretty old, I remind him that I was a freshman in high school when he was going to war for the first time. But then when we moved into our home together, I got a lot of my like schoolwork and stuff, and it's kind of crazy to see that I was writing essays about the futility and tragedy of war from reading the Odyssey while he was on his first deployment.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of things about our relationship that we were kind of in the same orbit, but we never really came into close enough vicinity to engage in a relationship until much later in life. And so when we first started dating, he kind of like did a character check on me with the friends once he started realizing the overlaps. And so it's always been kind of like a funny part of our story.
So what is the age gap?
I graduated high school in 2008. So we're about 5 years apart.
Oh,
It's not
geez.
too big, but big enough when you think about I was at war and she was,
Yeah, it's not a lot now, but if we had ever come into contact before it was legal, he wouldn't have even like gave me a second glance.
Yeah, I know. The older we get, though, the less it matters. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think once you're over 25, I think I had somebody on the podcast, they were talking, there's a 17-year rule. Like if the separation and then they divide something, I don't know. But I don't know. If
Yeah.
people are in love and it's all good and everybody's an adult, like it is what it is. So,
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Okay. So a lot of, what's that?
I said
What, Mark?
E40 said age ain't nothing but a number.
Exactly right. So good job. So, all right. Let's see, because you clearly overkicked your coverage. So it's all good. But all right. Let's talk about Foothill High School and wrestling, right? So at some point after you moved to Sacramento, attended Foothill High School and sports became part of it and wrestling in particular. So do you want to share a little bit about that transition?
Yeah,
And
I was pretty lucky in '99 moving to Sacramento. I was going right into freshman year, right? So right into high school. Going into high school, before high school, my mom wouldn't let me play football. I was too little, she said. And so once I hit high school and, going to a new school, I was like, all right, I'm going to play football, meet some people. So, right, those 2-a-days in the summer, being the new kid, wasn't too fun. I don't say getting picked on, but people wondering who I was and what I was doing there. So quickly, I kind of made a name for myself, letting people know I wasn't, coming from the Bay Area, I wasn't going to let you
we're
say
not taking
anything.
any shit.
What's that?
Not taking
Yeah.
any shit.
No, I just stood up for myself, and so people were a little thrown off by that. Played football freshman year, and then halfway through freshman wrestling season, Foothills always hosted 2 wrestling tournaments a year. Since Bill Lum, who just retired, has been running the program since '95. A fresh soft tournament for wrestling, and then also a varsity tournament. And
Right.
so I went to the JV tournament at the high school and saw some wrestling and went to the coach and said, "Hey, coach, I'd like to come wrestle." And he said, "Come in the room on Monday." And so, got to go in the room the next week. And then that following weekend, back then, I believe it was called the A6 Invitational, which after Tim's passing, it's renamed the Tim Brown Memorial. And so got to see the A6 tournament and being one of the largest tournaments in Northern California, the toughest tournament in Northern California. We get teams from pretty much all the surrounding states. Teams
over 90 schools.
Yeah, but nowadays it's 90 schools, about 90 schools. We give and take some years, depending. Some schools will send their B teams, a full 14-man roster. Some will send smaller, but so wrestling, yeah, became part of life. I only played football one more year, JV year. We went 10-0, and I was like, okay, I'm good with that. Going, if I would have went varsity, they would have wanted me to put on weight. I was playing tight end. I said, I can't put on weight. Wrestling's my jam. I'm not going to do that to myself. I knew I wasn't going to play varsity. The coaches didn't play juniors, that kind of stuff. So I said, I'm going to focus on wrestling, and did that for the next couple of years. In that room is where met a lot of my good friends, and Tim being one of them. Started wrestling, started hanging out, started working on cars, going fishing, and just building relationships. Yeah.
Exactly. That's how it works. Okay. So let's see. So wrestling was the jam, and then somewhere in there. So tell me the great difference between you and Tim then.
We're the same age.
Same age. Okay. All right.
Same
So
age, yeah.
he was already wrestling?
Yeah, he'd probably been wrestling since junior high. Number of the guys have been, right? Had grown up since elementary school before that, together. So they'd wrestled. The program was still kind of new, so I wasn't too far behind getting in the room,
Right.
tech wise. And so Tim was about my first year, 145 pounds. Tim wrestled 145 pounds all 4 years. Varsity and not varsity. Tim wasn't too aggressive. He was a small guy. He had big biceps, but we called them marshmallows. He was an all around great guy. I always say, God takes the good ones first. He was a great guy.
Okay. And then what weight did you wrestle?
Mostly 152s in high school. Yep. I didn't accomplish everything I wanted to in high school. I lost a match before going to California State in 03. I beat many of guys that went to state that year and placed. So was really disappointed. But after that last match at Masters, you sit in it for a few minutes, and then life goes on. There's not much you can do about it, right? And I was already enlisted to go to the Marine Corps and stuff at that time, so it was just next chapter. I know we'll get back to that, but after the Corps, coming back, I went right back to the wrestling room to mentor mentor and help kids. So it was a good time.
Yeah. Well, I just want to touch on the transition stuff. So, because a lot of what we talk about with folks is there's, you have life, and then there's transition into the military, and then you're there. So you're kind of, doing it. And so there's that whole thing. And then as you prepare to come out, so there's that whole kind of discharge thing or getting out. And then, so there's that. And then, so you're prepping. And then once you hit the streets and the uniform's off, then there's a whole nother world of transition. And of course, dependent upon what your pre-military experience is, I think the stats at MVP kicks around between 35 and 40% of everybody that enlists in the military already have some form of post-traumatic stress going in, based on their childhood rearing. So it's not everybody, but then the military obviously gives you its dose of reality in life, and we'll come back to that whole thing. And then coming out is a whole nother change. So just those skills about the transition, so which is the reality. So being young and losing a match you didn't want to lose and letting that go, it honestly is a life lesson that sports teaches all of us at some point, because everybody wrestles the last match or plays the last game eventually. And so it's just kind of part of that life piece. So, but what we learned in sports certainly take with us. So we'll come back to that. Okay. Well, then let's talk about, and now, Amanda, I don't want to leave you out. I'm kind of focused on Mark. So if there's anything that parallels in here, you can jump in anytime. Okay. So we're going to run through the military stuff, if that's okay.
Totally.
Okay. All right. So you lost a match, graduated high school, and you already knew you're going to the Marines. So that was 2004. Is that right?
03 still.
03. Okay.
I went in it. I graduated at 17 years old, went to boot camp at 17 years old.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right down here in Southern California.
Yeah.
MCRD San Diego. Multiple guys out of the wrestling room a year ahead of me went to the Corps. My brother-in-law, who's a years ahead of me, went to the Corps. So I knew what boot camp was going to be, right? I wasn't one of those naive guys that thought I was going to get lollipops every night. You know what I mean? I knew I was going to get yelled at. I knew I was going to get beat up per se. And another life lessons, I knew there was an end date. I knew boot camp was 3 months long, and it was a day I was going to be done.
Right.
So yeah, I went to boot camp at 17, turned 18 in boot camp. Um, uh, Luckily, per se, right, I knew what I was doing. I was loud. I'm squared away. So I picked up guide in boot camp at like day 17, and continued. I was guide all through boot camp. So I was meritoriously promoted to private first class 3 months in. So that put me in a weird area between guys that went in at the same time as me and were already PFCs, and guys that were going to pick up later. So through the core, I was in a weird spot where I always had younger guys than me, even though we were the same time in grade. And so I graduated boot camp. I was a communications field radio operator. So then I went out to 29 Palms, California for a month or two of communication school, talking on radios. And then from there, back then in comm school, you had a ranking class, right? 1 through whatever. And at the last week, they put up on the board every unit that was needed Marines that week, right? So 5 people here to this unit, 5 people to this unit, 5 people to this unit, so on. And they went down in the ranking class, and you got to choose where you got to go. And the first top list was 2D recon, right? So the instructor said, hey, who wants to go recon? Everybody in the class put their hand up. Being a young, naive Marine, I said, hey, where's second at? Right? Marines now know second everything's on Lejeune. And they said, Camp Lejeune. So I put my hand down. I was a West Coast guy, was not trying to go out to the East Coast. There were 2 corporals in my class that were changing MOSs, and he yelled at me, put your hand back up, Carrillo. So I put my hand back up. I was number 2 in class, so that guaranteed me a slot to go recon out to Lejeune. And again, right there, it was like, all right, I guess that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Tell them what you realized last night. When did you get to recon? When you looked at your date?
I was filling out some of this stuff off your stuff. I wanted to have dates and stuff. So I hit recon April 8th, 2004, which is 2 days after her birthday. So the last time I was like, how old were you in 04?
Got it.
Got out to 2nd Reconnaissance Battalion, Camp Lejeune, Courthouse Bay. We had a lot. They brought in a lot of comm guys, right? Everybody was deploying. Battalion was deploying. So we did a workup. Within the first few weeks, we did the recon indoc to see if any Marines would, pass the indoc and want to stay back and become reconnaissance Marines. In that indoc, I failed the underwater swim. Again, the only thing I failed, I believe, in the pool. And so I was bummed out at that time, but instantly realized, because some guys had passed, they said, okay, good, you're staying back in the reconnaissance indoc platoon, the RIT platoon, to get thrashed for however long, and the rest of you are now going to deploy with battalion, right? So I wanted to deploy, so I was kind of like, okay, this worked out for a reason.
Gotcha.
And then, again, people noticing I had a little bit of a head on my shoulders. They moved me from the communication shop to S6 shop, S6, over to the 3 shop to operations. Me and 2 other Marines went to the S3 shop and were directly under a Master Gunnery Sergeant 0321 Reconnaissance Marine. So I got schooled up pretty quick by Master Gunnery Sergeant Helms on what we needed to do in operations, and then deploying to Fallujah, Iraq for OIF 2 September of 04. So battalion went over to Fallujah September 04. And then shortly after that, I just was checking dates. November, Operation Phantom Fury kicked off, which was the second battle of Fallujah, of us trying to go in and capture it back. So it was a pretty wild operation. I want to say one of the bloodiest of Iraq. I literally, the beginning opening night of the invasion, I was watching it on a 13-inch TV, black and white, about as big as this laptop screen. This CIA had a plane up in the air called Schweitzer, and I was watching it with some CIA agents on a black and white TV of the invasion starting at the north side of the city. And it was just in awe, of watching this and knowing what was going on.
Right. And so were you plane bound with your duties then, for the most part, or not? Or were you? Well, like,
say that again.
Well, in comms, like, what was your day to day like on the
So
deployment?
in the 3 shop, I was in operations. I worked in the reconnaissance operation post, the command center, the Rock.
Okay.
And in there, I was on a computer most of the day, watching reports that were coming in and
Gotcha. Okay.
seeing. It was literally a live chat room of everyone in the area of operation around Fallujah. Stuff
Just
going on.
shooting.
Yeah, people in contact, small arms fire, indirect fires, where's it coming from, and that kind of coordination.
Gotcha.
Stuff would come in from the radios from our guys in the field, come into our officer who was in charge that day, and then they would tell me what to give to the hires, basically. So we were running and then planning and running battalion size operations. I think we did 5 or 6 that deployment battalion operations where headquarters and the 3 companies would go out and do something in the AO.
Didn't you drive that first deployment too?
I drove a little bit that first deployment. I didn't go out too much, but did do a few ops out. One battalion would go out.
Yeah.
A lot different than my second deployment. That we lost a lot of guys that first deployment. Came back to Lejeune. People move around, people move out. We got in a whole bunch of new guys to go back again. We knew we were going back at exactly 11 months from the day we got home. So we had our second deployment already set. I think I came home from that deployment as an E3, and then shortly later picked up E4 corporal. And then on my second deployment, picked up E5. But backtracking, we got back, got a lot of new Marines in because we needed the comm guys to go back over. So we probably got in 25 young Marines, trained them up, kicked some guys out to the companies, and then full workup. By then, we had to come out to California, 29 Palms, Mojave Viper, which all Marine Corps units had to come out to for training.
Yep.
And then went back OIF 5, March of 06 to October of 06. So, I was playing that Green Day song.
Wake me up when September.
Yeah, when September ends, because I knew I was coming home in October. So,
right.
Good time.
Good old Green Day.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right.
Backtrack a little bit because Tim was in there too.
Yeah. So after the first deployment, came home, 30-day leave, right from Lejeune, came back to California, partying with all my friends, hanging out, drinking. With Tim one night, we were in the car driving to a casino outside of Sacramento that used to be 18 and up. So at 18, we go gamble. And so me and him were riding up to go meet up with some friends and gamble and party. And he said he wanted to go in the Corps. He wanted to go in the Corps when we got out of high school, but didn't because he had a girlfriend and so on and so forth. And I said, I'll take you to the recruiter's office tomorrow. We'll call. Let's go. And he said, all right, yeah, let's do it. He wanted to go infantry. And at that time, I was like, you really want to do that? I chose not to kick indoors every day. He wanted to kick indoors and pull triggers. And so that's what he chose to do. So that Monday, took him down to the recruiter's office, got him enlisted, and said, good luck. I went back to Lejeune. He had a little bit of time before he went to boot camp. And then when he got out of boot camp, went to School of Infantry in California, and then he was stationed in Hawaii, 3-2, I believe. So luckily, he called me and said he's getting stationed in Hawaii. I said, you lucky guy. Got out to Hawaii with his unit. I think he was only out there 3 months before they deployed to Iraq. And so through that time, right, that was after my first deployment. Then he started the Marine Corps journey. I went back to Lejeune, did my 11-month workup, deployed again. And then as I got home from my second deployment on my 30 days leave, Tim was on his first deployment.
Yep.
And I was about a block and a half from his mother's house when his mom called me, Susan called me and said that there were Marines here saying that Tim was killed. And she was calling me hysterical to tell me to come talk to him, tell him it's not true type stuff. I flipped a U-turn, was at the house within 2 minutes, then became the liaison between the Marine Corps and the family, extended my leave to be able to get Tim's body back to California and then to get him buried. He's currently buried at Mount Vernon Memorial Cemetery in Fair Oaks, California, just outside Sacramento.
Okay. The reality.
Yep. He He wanted it. He wanted to go. He wanted, you know.
Yep. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that can't. Yep. Can't be easy, but feels important though to tell the story about the reality of what folks went through and the commitments people made and things that we were doing as a country and all that kind of stuff. So the cost. So, and I
Yeah.
think folks involved in it have an idea of it all, but I think on the other hand, it's still important to share those stories because, we're talking about suicide prevention with vets. And I still feel like sometimes when we meet people, if they haven't heard stories, they're confused about, why is there a suicide epidemic with veterans, that whole kind of thing. It's like somehow you have to explain it to them. And so I appreciate you sharing the story because it's,
Can't even explain it to them, right? I mean, that's just knowing that people that have been there, been to war. War is war. And if you haven't been it, yeah, you can see movies, yeah, you can talk to people, but
yeah. Well, there we go. Okay. Well, again, thank you for sharing that. So we'll kind of weave in and out of that again as we kind of keep going because I do want to keep talking about that. So after then Tim's death and burial, then that was pretty close to when you eventually discharged.
Yeah. I had another 11 months. So after the second appointment, like another 11 months. So went back out to Lejeune.
Okay.
Was then deploying again for a third time, but I was slotted to get out. I put in a package to re-enlist, and they said no at first, and so I was like, "Cool, I'm getting out. I'm not mad at it,"
Right.
But then,
literally the week I'm getting out of the Corps, I'd already checked out of everywhere. You got to go through a checklist and get all departments signed off. So I was checked out and leaving on Friday. On the Monday, my master sergeant called me in the office and said, "Hey, go over to main side, go talk to the monitor," which is who you put in your re-enlistment package to. And I said, "I don't want to drive. Main side was 45 minutes from Courthouse Bay, and my V8 truck. Nobody's paying for my gas. Like, why do I want to go talk to him? He already told me to. He told me no, and he said, go talk to him." So I drove over there, walk in the office, and he goes, "What did you want?" And I go, I couldn't even remember. Jump school. I wanted to come back out to California, and I wanted to go to Bridgeport, which is just south of Tahoe, cold weather training, Marine Corps cold weather training. I just want to get back into Northern California. After 2 months being gone from Northern California, I wanted to be home. And so when I walked in the office and said, "Yeah, I want to be at Bridgeport, blah, blah, blah," he goes, "Okay, yep, fine. I'll give you everything you want. You'll deploy with the battalion again. You'll come back, and then all that stuff will kick in. But you got 24 hours to re-enlist."
no pressure.
And I was like, damn. And so again, got in the truck, driving home, and I love the Corps. I love the Corps. If they would have given me what I wanted back then, I'd probably just retiring a year ago, like a buddy of mine, But
Right.
As I drove home and called my mother, called my father, called my grandparents, I just felt like they were just trying to get me, trying to get me on something. I knew everything wouldn't be on paper in 24 hours, and they were just gonna give me the big green weenie again, And so I said, after talking to everybody, I said, I can't do it. It's this week. I can't do it. I'm getting out on Friday. And so I said no. And then it took about 2 week drive back across country before coming home. So,
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, even in then, there were guys that got out ahead of me that went to work for the federal government and were at Quantico. Communication's big. They need us. And so they were calling. I literally was driving out the front gate of Lejeune, and a guy was calling me out of Quantico saying, "Drive north, Mark. I'll have an apartment here for you by the time you get here. This and that." I said, "I got to go home. Let me go home for a while." I hadn't been home for a long period of time in 4 years. And after doing two wars, and I just wanted to go home.
Yeah.
And so I turned all that down and came home the end of 07. And then the recession kicked off, right? Just at the end of 07, 08. And
Right.
So it was a struggle. You're talking about transition, right?
Yep.
Thought I was going to come home and hang out. I told myself, again, 21, wasn't even 22 yet. I said, I'm partying for 6 months. Leave me alone. Don't want to don't have to worry about anything. And I was going to go in Department of Corrections was my plan. I went to San Quentin when I was about 12 years old for a family day, and saw one side of the fence and the other side of the fence. And I didn't want to go on one side. So I chose, I thought a CO would be an interesting job and keep me entertained, keep me active. And then with the recession, the state said no more classes, no academies. They stopped academies, I think, for 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. And so when that happened, I was like, dang, what am I gonna do? I got to do something, I think at that time, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I had 10% disability for tinnitus, which was like $300. Which at 21 years old, I was like, hey, that's a truck payment for the rest of my life. I'm content with that,
Yeah.
Yeah. What was I?
When you got out, you didn't know what you were gonna do, and your mom told you
Yeah,
to.
my mom's been a medical assistant with Kaiser for over 30 years now. So back then, another buddy of mine who's a little older wanted to get in the medical department. She pushed him towards surgical technology, surge tech, which is being in the operating room, handing the doctor the instruments, scalpel, that type of stuff. And so my buddy was doing that. He liked it. And she goes, go to tech school. It was a year program, Monday through Friday, 3 hours a day. Not difficult. I told people I got into it because if a doctor asks you for the fork, knife, or spoon, what are you going to hand them? You're going to hand them what they asked for. Right? It's not a difficult job. Right. As I got into it, it got a little deeper and a little more.
There's more stuff. Yeah.
But that was the basics of it. Right. To stand there all day instead of running around like I was a Marine. So I went to tech school. At that time is when I started coaching again. Right. Got back up to Foothill, and just like in the Marine Corps, mentoring, helping, coaching young kids. Just giving them a little something different to look at. And then got a job at a hospital, a Trauma 2 center in just north of Sacramento, and got to see everything imaginable, in the operating room. So did that for about 4 years until I just felt it was a drag on me. It was stressful, doctors, the way people would talk to me, and I just had to resign from the position.
The bureaucracy of civilian work. There's a lot of red tape, and I think that civilians can't really understand how to embrace the suck, and so we started dating in 2012. Well, we met in 2012, and he was working at the hospital, and in 2014 they got a new manager. And they had this very expensive piece of equipment, and it had been broken a couple times, so they had this big meeting about it. And his comment was like, well, you need to write people up. If they don't follow the SOP, they need to get a write-up.
We're a union. You're breaking stuff.
Yeah, and somebody said to him, we can't do this. Isn't the Marine Corps, Mark. We can't just write people up.
The new director said, Mark, this isn't the Marine Corps. It doesn't go like that. And right there, I was like, I walked right into the computer room, typed up my resignation, signed it, walked over, handed it to her, and she was mind blown. Everyone, at that time, I could choose my schedule. I was making decent money. I never thought I would leave there. It was a good paying job that I could tell them when I wanted to work and not wanted to work. But because of new management coming in, and I just didn't need it, so I resigned from the job, and that's.
He was retired for a year, fishing twice a day. And then that's when we got into the veteran stuff. So
yeah, about the same time transitioning, I was drinking. I drank all through the Marine Corps. Right? I explained to people, I lived in a hotel with 3 stories. All my buddies, every single floor had a cooler or 2 full of beer. We could go to the store and get a 30-pack at Miller Genuine Draft for under $10 back. Right. So and so that was the lifestyle. Coming home, I was drinking a 5th of vodka a day. Going to the gym, going to school, but still drinking a 5th of vodka a day. And a buddy called me. This was about a year and a half after the Corps. Buddy called me. He was in Northern California, was working a cannabis farm, and the plants had just were too big and falling over and breaking. So he called me and said, hey, can you come up and help me? And I didn't really want to, or I didn't want to fall back into cannabis. After the Corps, I was a little brainwashed per se. And so I said, all right, I'll drive up to help you. So I drove the 3 hours. Let me back up a little bit before that. Weeks before that, something's wrong with my body. My mom going to Kaiser, I said, Mom, I need blood work done. Something's wrong. So I went and did the blood work. In the meantime, my buddy calls me, and I go up to Northern California to help him with these plants. I'm standing in an area where there's no phone reception at all, and my phone rings. And I answer it, It's the doctor. And he goes, Mark, you really need to stop drinking. And I go, all right, understand, doc, give me some reasoning. And he goes, impotency. And I was like, what is that? And he goes, impotency. You won't get a heart on, right? And I was 22 years old going, oh shit. And so right then I said, all right, I'll get off the hard alcohol. And so right then I stopped the vodka, went to Coors Light, right? And then it took me a few years to completely sober up.
It's a process.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I knew right then I needed to stop drinking that much vodka, right? Hard alcohol. And then I was like, okay, I'm just drinking water, Coors Light. And then I just stopped having the urge. So that night when he called me, though, I'm standing in these plants telling me to quit drinking. I said, okay, this is a sign. I'm going to start smoking cannabis again. And so that night I started smoking cannabis again. And that was what helped me whittle off that alcohol over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And then
well, Mark, so in the transition, obviously with the alcohol and what you were doing and all that kind of stuff, there's other emotional kind of stuff and mental stuff going on with you. Can you talk a little bit about, I don't know if the symptoms is the right word, but like how was this kind of PTSD or whatever, how was this manifesting itself in your life? And then like how, in the beginning, how conscious were you that it was connected? And maybe, I don't know how you feel about that, if, to the extent it was connected to military service or whatever. And then what was your kind of awareness process as you were going through this drinking and then moving into the cannabis world? I mean, tell me about that journey just a little bit.
During the time, right? During that, you need a long enough track record, right? To look back and go, hey, okay. Right. So at that time, it really was still fresh, new. You get out of the military, you come home, everybody's there for the first week or two, right? Everybody's calling you, everybody excited to see you, but then everybody goes back to their own lives, right? Everybody's got their own job, their own kids, their own stuff. And so when that fades, then you go, okay, I'm alone. What am I going to do? What can I do?
You got King.
Yeah, I needed a drinking buddy. So I got an Old English Bulldog, probably within the first year of getting out. And that was my drinking buddy.
His name was King?
His name was, King Lewis was what I named him. That's a funny story. Being a Marine, right? I wanted an English Bulldog. Being a 21, 22-year-old kid, didn't have that kind of money. And so I started looking at other breeds, right? And I came across the Old English Bulldog, which in the 70s, they started breeding the English Bulldogs back to the standard American Bulldogs for health reasons, joint reasons, breathing reasons, all that type of stuff. And so they're very similar. And so I was shocked. I said, wow, I want to start looking for these dogs. Talking to my mom about it because I was living with her. My mom said, I think a lady at work just had a litter of those. And I was like, what? Like they're kind of new, rare. And next day at work, she called me. She said, yeah, they had a litter like 2 days ago. And I said, wow. So at 4 days old, I got to go and pick King out of a litter. I forget how big the litter was, but I picked him out. And then every couple weeks would go until he was 8 weeks old when I could bring him home. And yeah, so him, cannabis, and bulldogs. I say bulldogs because eventually I started breeding bulldogs. Really helped me to slow down.
Right.
After the transition of coming out, it's finding a purpose. What's your purpose? What are you doing? I think that's almost every human being's life journey per se, right? What are we supposed to be doing? And so talking to other vets, being around other vets, I thought that it was to be a productive member of society, right? Working a 9 to 5, working in the hospital, saving lives. But then realized that, that's not the box that you got to fit in. And then trying to find other ways, right? So by this time, after leaving the hospital, I was growing a decent amount. I was growing enough for my own, and I got a lot of veteran buddies around Sacramento, so helping and giving stuff away. A buddy of mine owned a club here in Sacramento, and I was growing enough. So I wanted to. I said, how can I start helping people? And we all know Angie's List, so we see the commercials on TV for, right? 20 years ago when Angie's List started, we were like, what is this? Who is this? Why is this person special? 20 years later, now it's just Angie, right? Everybody knows there's Angie. So 10 years ago, I said, I just need to start something, put a name on it. I'm already giving out cannabis to all my friends. So how can I step this up? So I called a friend who owned a dispensary in Sacramento and said, hey, this was back California terminology prior to Proposition 64. So 215 days, medical marijuana days.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, what's your slow night of the week? Can I come in and bring my own products and give them away free to vets? And he said, sure. So on January 2015, the first and third Tuesday of every month, I'd be at his shop and customers would come in to purchase stuff. And I'd ask everybody, hey, you a vet? You know any vets? Veterans would be like, yeah, I'm a vet. What's up? Kind of standoffish. And I'm like, hey, man, I'm a Marine. I'm just here to help. I got some product. What do you use? What do you like to use? What do you need? And I would give them free stuff I grew, stuff I made.
Yeah.
So within that first month, we had about 10 people coming by. Within 3 months, we had about 80 people hanging out and smoking in the parking lot. And you can't do that. You got to be off premises. There's a lot of laws and stuff. And so when I noticed that, I realized that it was a camaraderie and fellowship that veterans were looking for, right? That we missed from whatever branch. And so then I started looking for warehouses or any venue that would allow me to bring in upwards of 50 to 200 veterans to medicate, to smoke free of charge. We weren't charged. We still have never charged veterans anything in over 10 years. Everything's free for the vets. And it's crazy to say, right? Because everything costs. Veterans will tell you the first, everything costs something. But from us, it's free. I don't want nothing from nobody,
Yep.
And so, we started I started Meds for Vets Sacramento, January 2015. My partner, Kevin Richardson, is another Marine who started the Weed for Warrior project in 2014. He had a suicide attempt, and another veteran gave him some cannabis. He became very euphoric and wanted to tell everybody that cannabis saved his life and tell people about it. Kevin's a great guy. Like I said, infantry Marine, a little bit earlier than I was in. He's 6'4", 250 pounds right now. Has done professional MMA fighting. He's been rolling jiu-jitsu now for the past 20 years. I think he's number 3 in the country at whatever belt he is right now. So he's doing good things. And so he called me and said, hey, I want to put all these veteran cannabis groups under one canopy. He was planning a cross-country tour for Veterans Day 2015 from California, multiple cities across the U.S. to end in Washington, D.C. On Veterans Day. And so after talking with them, and I got with them, and I became the Sacramento chapter of the Weed for Warrior project. And then eventually Kevin never got the help he needed for his suicide attempt, and dealing with business and veterans, it's not fun or easy. And he was just getting stabbed in the back a lot, and was having another episode, and called me one day, and I said, bro, you go take care of yourself. I'll step up on the national side and try to fix what's going on. Because at the time, Kevin was just letting everyone represent us. Any veteran that said he smoked cannabis and was, it helped him, you could be the Weed for Warrior project. And that went on for a number of years. And there was people everywhere, all over the internet. We had representation of the UK, Australia, a lot of good people, but then you got the bad apples too. So when I stepped up on the national level, I said, to be a chapter, you have to be doing at least one event a month to bring bodies together. Just an event. You ain't got to provide cannabis. You don't have to, because that's the ultimate goal. But depending on where you're at in the country or what, legalization, everything matters. Law matters. I didn't want any veterans to get in trouble. So at minimum, all you had to do was bring veterans together. And so that cleaned it up. Took me a little while to clean it up. At the height in California, we had 16 chapters from Humboldt all the way down to San Diego. No money being made, nobody charging veterans, people bringing in product and giving it away to veterans. And so that's what we've been doing now for over 10 years. Once Proposition 64 hit the ballot in California, we were very vocal against it, with all the red tape and laws and licenses you have to move and transport, grow, make. It's on and on in the state of California. It's crazy. We were vocal against it. It passed. And then when it passed, there was no way for us to give away free product. Any companies that were going legal, once that product is retail ready, the state wanted tax percentages on every product. So if you made 100 of these, they wanted the tax money right away.
Prior to sale. prior to sale.
Back then, prior to sale. So it took us 2 years here in Sacramento to go down to the Capitol to fight for Senate Bill 34, which was a pathway that was implemented within the metric track and trace system of cannabis here in California that would show something going from cultivation or manufacturing through the track and trace system out of a retail store to a patient, to a medical marijuana patient, which we've been helping veterans get medical marijuana recommendations for over 10 years. We can help anyone get one right now in California and other states. You can check out the website. But hugging that side of a patient gives you more rights in California. So we hug that side a lot.
Yeah. So Mark, I just want to circle back though one more time. And if you don't want to go any further with it, it's all good, right? I just like some of the symptoms that, apparently in your involvement with cannabis, including using it, has been helpful. And I guess I'd like to help people understand who that's kind of a different world for. So as I'm a vet dealing with whatever it is, and I don't know if it was stress, anxiety, suicidal, whatever, and I don't know, and you don't have to share any more than you want to, but I'm just like, kind of what were you going through to the point that marijuana made such a difference for you? And how does it, like, what does it do exactly that relieves some of that pressure or, and again, I don't want to put words on it. I want you.
The way I explained, right? Because cannabis is a tool. There's many different, right? People might just think smoking cannabis or smoking a joint, but there's many different form factors into cannabis. For me, it really slows me down. I'm very 100 miles a minute. Yeah. But the cannabis is like a backpack. The stress on your shoulders and tension in my neck. When I smoke, it's like dropping your pack. It's the tension's relieved off my neck and my back. And I feel like I can move forward, if that makes sense.
100%. Like, because stress, our mind and our heart like to dump shit into the body, right? And that's where we carry a lot of that pressure and stress, and we get locked up and tight, and it just feeds into that whole system of kind of feeling underwater. Or
stress kills on your heart and your cardiac. It's and so being mindful of that, and then just going back to life lessons. You can't control what you can't control, right? You got to let it go. You got to find other tools that work for you. I know you're big into breathing, and I breath work's my next thing. I'm working on to at least try to set it daily to do so.
Well, I'll be sending you a coupon with a comp for our app, Hidden Pearl Studio, so you guys can both jump on. And we do about 20 new pieces a month between guided meditations and yoga movement and all that. So, well, how about let's do this. I threw in here just as a conversation piece because we like to educate and support other folks. I just pulled a little bit out of the MVP and in our world, a little bit about some stuff. And I was going to bounce these off you. And if you use any of them, great. If you don't, it's okay. But these are kind of things that we talk about within MVP a little bit about some of the stuff. So, and that's all in there. So one is they've really had a focus on trying to embrace gratitude for the things that we do have in life and not thinking about maybe what we don't have. So just kind of that, and really push a lot of kind of self-journaling with including like a daily gratitude practice where listing 2 to 3 things each day that we're grateful for and that kind of stuff. So, and you can hop in anywhere in here if you've done any of this. They've really upticked over the last 2 years practicing this notion about mindfulness, meditation, and breath work. So just helping people, because maybe we're not smoking or we can't in the moment. We always have our breath with us. So using that as a tool to kind of calm the body, calm the mind, kind of regroup things and all that. And then being mindful. We talk a lot about that thoughts are just thoughts. They're not, just because I have the thought doesn't mean it's accurate or true or that I need to act on it. Because we all have parts within us that feed us a lot of lines of bullshit. And so we got to be able to filter those out. So helping people not buy into the thought just because it's in their head. And then also same thing with emotions. We deal with so many people that have so much shame and guilt over some of the things that they've felt or, those kind of things. And just because we have a feeling, again, we can't control what feelings emerge. And so it's just kind of letting those things kind of pass and just not getting on the boat with them. You know what I mean? Like kind of let them float downstream. So anyway, obviously connection.
Right. I go negative. And as soon as you start going negative, right, it's hard to switch and just say 5 positive things in my head, because if I go negative, it's just negative, negative, negative. And then I'm down in a rabbit hole and in a dark place. And so to get out of that as fast as possible, as soon as I start saying cussing some shit out in my head, I switch it.
Yeah. Well, so one, I mean, the lesson in that is obviously you have to have enough awareness to be able to separate your kind of consciousness from the negative thoughts, so those negative thoughts pop up, but they're not us. That's just how the brain works. It's always going to, have a focus on negativity to some extent. So that you're developing that awareness and can say, ooh, this shit's starting to roll. And then you've got a strategy that you can implement in order to get out of it. I mean, that's exactly the kind of stuff that we're trying to help people with, so as they take a breath, this is negative talk. I don't need this. We kind of encourage them to like get a visual of it and maybe say, hi, thanks for visiting, but I'm not going with you today. And you're going to leave or I'm leaving you, whatever. So, but that's a great tool too. So repeating like 3 to 5 things, I am positive, I'm strong, or whatever it is that responds to that. So that's a great tip. So like that, building
Oh,
strong connections. Yeah, go, man.
just on that note, one of the things that kind of prompted me to reach out to the podcast was watching the Receivers Netflix series and
Yeah.
listening to how George does his self-talk on the field, because like you said, it's inevitable that especially in times of high pressure that we're self-critical. Our brain is our own worst enemy. I led a peer support group for veterans and caregivers with the Weed for Warriors with COVID and stuff. We did like a virtual support group. I got NAMI peer support certified in 2021 or something, 22.
Okay.
And so kind of the way I talk to the veterans and the caregivers about that pathway, right? Like those negative thoughts are kind of inevitable. But we're just trying to create a stop sign in our brain and then work through that new path. It's always easier to go down the path we've always traveled because it's very well worn. We can see it clearly. But to create that stop sign for yourself and then start kind of trudging through the brush to the left to make that directionality go the way that you want it to go is how I kind of created that visual. So since you said, the visual aspect of it, that's kind of how I've described that to my veterans and stuff. So I just wanted to pop that in there.
No, I like it a lot. Certainly the road less traveled, it's a little bit more cumbersome and difficult, but yet gives us a freshness. And then and I use the backpack metaphor all the time, Mark, because I think it's so true. Like, the rucksack for the vet, right? We pack all that stuff in there. And then if you're going on a particular mission though, right, there's certain things you might need for that mission if you're in a different location and trying to do different things. And so you'll unpack the backpack and take some shit out, right? And so we talk all the time about like you're living in a civilian world now and you're carrying a lot of the shit in your sack that you might have needed back in the day, but you don't need those things in the same way in this life, and so trying to help people kind of, and then eventually just setting that whole thing down to some extent, which is really difficult for people, but having some visualizations and then being willing to kind of try some new things takes a lot of courage and support. And that's where like having somebody like you to help lead and guide and suggest and support, and then having relationships and friends that you can call in the moment when you're having a hard time. So love that. So all visuals. Okay. Let's see. We'll do encouraging, don't get into too much isolation. And that's I don't know. Anyway, that seems like a hard one for everybody because it's super easy
Yeah.
when things start to feel overwhelming, whether it's life or just people or just energetically, it just feels like it's all crashing down. And so you just want to kind of pull the raincoat on and pull the blankets up and like not do anything, but which is okay for a little bit. I mean, we all need our downtime, but at the same point, isolation is when that spiral down the drain can certainly happen. And if you're connected with other people, and I think we talk all the time about being vulnerable enough to ask for help. And we try to encourage the idea that vulnerability is really a strength, particularly I think with men. We've been taught as we grew up. I grew up in the John Wayne era, right? You punch first or shoot first, and you never tell anybody you're hurt, and you never tell anybody you're sad or whatever. And all that does is set us up for failure. So the idea that being vulnerable about things that are going on with us, at least with a core group of people, is really important to our own survival. So trying to suggest that. So let's see. Then we're trying to break down things into small steps. So a lot of our vets come out. Transition seems really massive. I got to get an apartment. I got to get a car, all this kind of paperwork and all that shit. And then the VA with all its paperwork and bureaucracy. And Mandy, you mentioned all that bureaucracy stuff with employment, and people just like, that's not really the space I'm in.
Even
Yeah,
just
go
to
ahead.
give an example of our personal experience right now, right? So we started looking Mark's never really done any sort of like mental health in terms of therapy or talk therapy or kind of, unpacking some of the stuff that he's gone through. And so
Yeah.
I mean, he's been out since 2007, and we've only really started to dabble in that in the last year. And we're in a position now where we're having difficulty finding coverage so that we can continue that care. So I'm on a different health plan than he's on. I'm not a VA patient, but we're being seen together through the Wounded Warrior Project, but we're out of sessions with them, right? And so I've been trying to get secondary coverage, and my insurance at first said like, yeah, it's gonna be fine. And then now they called me the next day and are like, well, actually, we're ending the contract with that company, so we're not going to approve this. And so I'm just in this place where, okay, so we need this. It's either pay for it out of pocket or stop care. And as with my education background, I'm like, this makes continuity of care so difficult to achieve. And this is something that, I'm educated in this space, and I'm still struggling to maintain that continuity of care. And for the average person, understanding how to navigate not just the health part of the VA, but also the compensation and pension part, it's
Right.
very confusing and run around. And it's a pretty common consensus from veterans that they're just going to tell you no because they're kind of waiting on you to take the out, and that's where, like you said, that core group of people that kind of connects you to each other, sharing that experience of challenging access, is something that at least gives them some motivation to press on. Don't take no for an answer. I think veterans are somewhat conditioned to just accept that no, and like you said, take the big green weenie and go on their way.
Right.
But I think the brilliance about recovery and the after service period is that you don't have to take that anymore. Like, you can continue to bang on those doors because you're entitled to that service. You just have to find someone that's willing to do the extra legwork for you to get you there.
Yeah. And like you said, connecting with other people who've been through the process and can say, hey, don't get discouraged. Here's a person to call, or there's one more form. I can help you with it, or whatever. But just knowing that other people have been through it, because when you feel like you're all alone, it's like you're floating in the ocean and you're just getting swamped. So
You
it's
just
really important to have those kind of connections with it. So, but it's so true about the whole. I mean, I just hit into Medicare. I just turned 65. And that whole transition, like, I mean, we had one of those Medicare specialists that got referred to us by somebody, and she was great. But like, if I'd had to navigate that whole thing, and I'm a lawyer, you know what I mean? Like, there's just so much shit. Then you make a call, and then you're on hold for 20 minutes, and you just like, like that's how you feel. So it is a real thing. So for all of that. So, okay, well, we'll roll through this. Let's see what else. Oh, we're talking about breaking down things into small steps. So like that, maybe just, and we talk all the time, both with sports and with all this stuff, small, consistent steps, all taken in the same direction, can lead to amazing results. So just do the one smallest thing you can do toward this objective and just have a success, and don't try to do too much too fast, and don't put all that shit on your shoulders. Like you said, take that backpack off. I'm going to do one thing today, this day only. Maybe it's, I'm not going to drink, whatever it is, whether it's in substances or whether it's paperwork or whatever it is, just living one day at a time with one step at a time. So today I'm going to get out of bed, I'm going to take a shower, and I'm going to eat a good breakfast. And maybe that could be a big win. You know what I mean? Depending where you're at with everything. So
I tell a lot of veterans, right? Veterans that don't have any care, aren't enrolled in the VA yet. Hey, just call the 1-800 number today. Just call them, tell them you want to
yeah,
enroll, and that you want to do something for your disability, and they'll start sending you paperwork. So that's just the one thing today. Start today. You don't have to do it for a year, but within the year, you got to do something.
yeah,
And and then maybe the first time they don't, second time they don't, but then we've gotten multiple phone calls of people being like, "Hey, I finally got my rating. Thank you, and now I
yeah.
can afford rent or food or whatever." Right? And so just call the 1-800 number is what I start with veterans that are like, "I don't know what I want to do. Why do I want to call?" Just call it.
I mean, even in our own family, my dad is a Marine Corps veteran, went to Lejeune. He was an engineer out there, and he's never in my life had health care. I remember him. He's always worked for himself.
Yeah,
If he was hurt or sick, he's from your generation, you just embrace the suck and you keep on going. He's from a very large dairy Catholic family, and so they had a hard childhood growing up. He went into the Marine Corps as soon as he could. And even as I started getting into helping the veterans with Mark and helping my brother with his VA claim, my dad didn't want to touch it. I'm like, Dad, you could get something, like you could get, at least let me help you with healthcare. And so when the Lejeune water stuff came out, I kind of showed it to him and was like, you could at least get because he has a skin condition that comes up when he has sun exposure. I'm like, you could at least get that sunscreen stuff like covered. It's expensive and you complain about it. Like, what if we could just get that covered, And so he let me help him get health insurance, I think maybe like 3 years ago now. And then in the last year or so, he's letting another one of our friends help him kind of initiate his claim. So it's, that constant kind of like a little bit at a time, and being around and hearing what we're doing with the veterans. My dad doesn't use cannabis at all. He gets real silly on it if he does even when he comes to our events, he's like, I'm getting contact high. But he will come and he likes to cook and socialize and talk shit with the guys, and so I'm happy that he's at least kind of started to engage in that way, and it's kind of opened his eyes up to the space as well.
And on him, right back to just red tape and people saying no. The first time they tried to put in his paperwork, they were like, no, he wasn't at Lejeune for more than 30 days.
Oh, yeah.
And then she was like, how can we prove that he was? And I said, DD 214, he was an engineer. There's only one engineer school in all the Marine Corps, and it's in Courthouse Bay, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
Still,
and
to
so
this day.
You literally have to highlight it, right? Highlight it when he was there and send it back in. And then they go, oh, okay, approved.
Yeah, I had to request his entire military record from DC and then find, like the school and then submit it and then mail it back. So I think it took like almost 6 months to get that process done.
Yeah. So, and sometimes we do get into this, but without jamming on the VA, but just if folks are listening, not to get discouraged and to be patient, ask for help, and just stay with it.
They're all different. One area of VA, one city's VA is much different than the next. Your provider, if you don't like your provider, get a new one. Ask them for another one. Change it. Like it's your own care. So you got to fight for your own care, which is hard. Again, us fighting and keep beating on the door.
There are also patient advocates at most VA facilities at this point. And so kind of the same thing is with your primary provider. If you don't care for that team, they're called PACT teams. At least they were. That changes with every administration, the language and design that they use. But your PAC team, if you're not a fan of your PAC team, you can go to your patient advocate and be like, I'm just not really, I don't think they're aligned with, my kind of mentality, and I'm looking for something a little different. Again, it goes kind of back to the bureaucracy. I don't think the individuals on the front lines that are administering the care share the views that are being presented or, kind of prevented by the VA in terms of access to care. And so I just kind of try to remind vets, even though you get frustrated because the person in front of you is telling you no, like they're kind of bound by the contract of their employment. And so they're going to do everything they can. But sometimes you just got to find someone that's willing to operate a little more in the gray areas and give you some more information. Whereas this guy's just used to the yes or no box. They're checking boxes on the backside. You're a lawyer. The insurance forms that go along with claims are very cut and dry. One of the conversations that I have with veterans that I'm helping with their claims process is like, they're going to ask you questions, and it's in our nature to downplay our suffering. Like we internalize that a lot. And so, I use our own experiences like, hey, if you have, we'll call it an episode, right? Like typically anyone that's close to you can feel that there's something coming in the days prior. Like there's increased tension. There's kind of like an eggshell feeling, and then you have whatever outburst or explosion, the main episode. And then there's recovery days after also. So, your family's kind of like preparing for this to come up. The fire starts, and then they also have to like deal with the aftermath. And so when you factor in all of those days, now you have 5 to 7 days where you've kind of had a disrupted routine and lifestyle. And that's, if you're having 2 episodes a month, that's 50% of the time that you're kind of living in that unequilibrium space. And so explaining it like that kind of helps people understand a little bit better of how to present it. Because you tell a provider, oh, I only have 1 to 2 bad days a month, like they can't do anything about that. But if you explain it in that conceptual value, then they can kind of like, oh, okay, that makes more sense, and kind of help you along with some better resources and access.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I just, like you said, and I was thinking too about just what you were talking about your dad, that generationally, but I think it's kind of built in too with the military. We downplay the way in which we've been impacted by things and the struggles that we currently are having. Because it's
100%.
like you feel like you're whining or being, wimpy or whatever like that. But if you don't put it all out on the table, you can't get coverage for it and you can't get the help that you need for what you're really going through. So just again, coming back to that honesty and being vulnerable about it enough to really get some help. So, all right. Oh, you one more thing? Go. You're okay.
I would say even in like the active duty culture, right? Like going to sick call is something that's seen as like negative. You don't go to sick call. So a lot of vets have challenges, never went. You hear that? He had a hernia surgery in country on his first or second deployment. Second deployment, he had mesh put in for a hernia, but because he didn't want to come back to the States, he wasn't leaving his guys in country. So he did 2 weeks of light duty before you were back out? And that's a major surgery. And you're considering they're carrying 50 to 100 pounds of gear. Like you're not supposed to be heavy lifting for.
That's what popped my hernia the second time.
Yeah.
For sure.
So,
I didn't want to, it needed to get fixed there or I wasn't doing it.
So a lot of guys have challenges even getting claims in for that stuff that happened during their service period because they embraced the suck and just kept on keeping on. But the way you get around that is not get around it, but the way that you can support that claim is getting letters from your buddies that know you were going through stuff. There's plenty of veterans that got other than honorable or dishonorable discharges because they were self-medicating, treating their mental health just to get through the day, to make that step forward, because they wanted to deploy with their boys because those were their brothers, and then they get caught and they take the fall and they get out and they don't have access to any benefits. They have to first get that discharge rate changed before they can pursue that, support and that healthcare. So there's so many different pathways to getting there, but it's about, again, reaching out to that community that you have at the time that's going to corroborate your position, that are going to typically be going through similar experiences, and so I use the example of the burn pit registry at this point. There are some pre-authorized conditions now related to the burn pits that if you have this and you have burn pit exposure, it's an automatic rating. But they are creating these registries to basically try and collect data so that as more disease occurrences happen in this population, they can add to that list. And it makes it easier to then achieve those ratings and get the care that you need, as opposed to having to fight just to get the rating in the first place, So again, I go back to the individuals in front of you are doing the best they can with what's available to them, but they are kind of structured by the confines of the insurance forms and stuff like that. So it's up to us to create those data sets so that they can then support us in the ways that the families need it.
Yeah. The whole culture about not getting, physical help, from sick bay or whatever, it seems, because if you're part of a team and you're injured, and then eventually the team is going to rely on you and you didn't get the help you could have gotten to be more healthy to support your team, it seems counterproductive to the whole philosophy of kind of the team unit within the military, but it's that real macho kind of tough guy, we don't do all that kind of stuff. And so, finding that balance again. So, okay. Well, last thing on our list, and then we want to jump in. So we covered a bunch of ground. I know we're kind of hitting our timing, so I want to do that too. But we also recommend moving your body daily, right? Whatever that means to people. So in addition, movement of the body with the breath. So we're big yogi folks, but whether it's walking or lifting weights or swimming or biking or anything, it helps kind of release that stress and tension, obviously. And so folks want to do that stuff. So, okay. I wanted to get to the couple last things. So the Weed for Warrior stuff, I think we talked about it. I got the mission statement in here. We're going to pop the link and all that kind of stuff into the show notes and all that. We'll share that with folks as far as that kind of goes. I did want to, and then, the one thing we didn't talk about, because the one thing you did hit me up on too was the Blood Runneth Orange. And so So the Weed for Warriors is there. You guys are working on it. We're going to put those in. If people want to support either through donations or whatever that might be, there'll be more information. We'll do all that kind of stuff. And if it's okay, here's what I came up with. We got chapters in California, Florida, Wisconsin, and Nevada. Is what I got from the notes.
So we got rid of the chapter model through COVID. With COVID, a lot of people still wanted to get together and stuff, but under the can't, right? It was just a touchy subject.
Yeah, gotcha.
Really,
okay.
and under the laws and stuff, California is the only place right now where we're giving away free cannabis under Senate Bill 34 under the law. We are hopefully in 2025 moving. Hopefully, we'll bring compassion via a national chain to Colorado, Ohio, Virginia, Massachusetts, Illinois, West Virginia, Delaware, New Jersey, and New York.
Well, and even before that, I think starting November 1st, that company is doing a roundup campaign for us through all of their stores.
It's called the Cannabis Company.
Okay.
And so they're going to be doing a roundup campaign in all of those stores in those states. And we are going to, whatever funds are raised in the respective states, we're hoping to initiate compassion programs in those states so that we can kind of increase that outreach. I help manage the Facebook page, and we get a lot of messages like, how can I get involved? Or I'm trying to find cannabis in my area. A lot of states have medical or recreational at this point, but they don't really, like California with that recreational legislature, didn't have a pathway created for compassion. And so we're trying to work with these larger multi-state operators to find the pathways, because the legislation is different in every state, to create that avenue so that we can support veterans in other places.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we're willing to help. We want to do as many events as possible, but it comes down to donations. We're not going to do an event for one joint. We're not going to have our brothers and sisters drive to wherever for a marketing promo, which everyone wants us to do. They've used us a lot. We have been used a lot over the last 10 years. So we're very tight on what we do and don't do as the Weed for Warriors, or let people use the logo and stuff. But we're about, if the Weed for Warrior project's ever there, then there's going to be free stuff for veterans. Come out, check us out. But like you said, everything's on the website. Events are on the website. What they need legally to come to an event in California is on the website. Frequent asked questions. Everything's on there.
Okay. Good to know. Okay. So we got all that. Let's see. And do you want to talk about any of these? I put in, because you mentioned it, you guys are transitioning from a nonprofit into a for-profit kind of entity. And is that still going on, or are you guys staying nonprofit?
From our conception, right? People have come to us and say they want to do a product with the Weed for Warrior project, or do that, right? Veterans, we know veterans are a good marketing tool, right? We don't want to be used, but if it works for the veterans and it works for everybody, then we're about it. So probably about 2-3 years ago, flour, right? Flour was the easiest thing to get in. A large retail chain in the state of California said, hey, if you guys bring us some flour, we'll be able to sell it for, type thing. So we started with flour. The cannabis, everything cannabis in California is going down right now. No one's making money. It's an ugly industry that they're trying to figure out. We're trying to figure it out. Everyone's trying to figure it out. And so flour kind of went down. We do have some concentrates on the market right now that are found in many stores via the website. You can go under cannabis and find more retail stores if you want to support us that way. With those funds is how we continue to drive and do the SB events all over.
So the components.
I didn't start helping veterans to start a business, but as Proposition 64 came in and business has been brought to us, we've done it. And we've never paid ourselves. We don't make money at this. People do see our social media. At one time we had 50,000 followers on one of our Instagram pages that, got shut down. So people think we're doing a whole bunch and, making money and that kind of stuff. And we're not. It's about helping the veteran, getting free stuff to veterans. So anyone that's connected to growers, manufacturers in these states, anyone dealing with legalization or because you got to work this stuff into the framework to give it away for free, right? Yeah. There's other ways on the computer systems, POS systems, they can check stuff out. You can pay for it all if you have somebody give you all the money, pay for the product and give it out for free, right? There's other ways to do it. It's just, how are we doing it?
Yeah, no, and it's not that. It's just, I think, making clear that to the extent you're selling product, it's not to the vets, it's to the open market. And then
Yeah.
those profits help you cover the cost of generating the product that is eventually given and donated back to the veterans. So it just kind of helps feed that while you're also working for donations and such. So, okay.
Right.
Anything else about the Weed for Warriors you want to say that we haven't talked about? And then let's jump for a minute or two back to Blood Runneth Orange, because we do want to leave the wrestling team hanging out. So are we good on the Weed for Warriors?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
I think so.
All right. Well, great. So again, we'll put links and stuff in there, a little description, so people can go there and encourage folks to do that. And so we'll be also offering some support with that way as well. So let's not forget. So back right to the high school, Foothill High School in Sacramento, California. So the Blood Runneth Orange Wrestling Club. And we got the Tim Brown Memorial Tournament. So we kind of talked a little bit about those things now, which is a big one. I know. So Amanda, just like kind of briefly, because I know I'm taking a bunch of your time, but let's say a word about Foothill High School, because I know when you contacted me, I think there were some demographics there that were pretty interesting. That if people are interested, and I think I'm just going to put in a nutshell. In general, we're really supportive of youth and high school sports if they're done correctly, as a way for kids to build teamwork, learn about leadership, hard work, embrace the suck a little bit, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of great lessons in sports to that extent, and particularly with youth that might be at risk in certain capacities. So maybe say a word or two about some of those demographics that you shared with me that I think are pretty interesting for folks.
Right on. Yeah, I just want to start with the wrestling. When I got out of the Marine Corps and went back to coaching, probably like the second year, a freshman came in. His name was Michael Lohman. He was probably 220 pounds his freshman year. I think size 14 shoes. Right. And somebody that young and that big, he still was trying to figure out how to walk, to be honest with you, right? How to walk and move. He eventually became a 2-time or 3-time state placer in California State as a heavyweight. Went on to a Augusta D1 school. He wrestled heavyweight. Became an All-American there in college wrestling. While he was at school, became a credentials to be a teacher. He is now back at Foothill High School teaching, as well as he just took over the athletic director. And so Bill Lum, who I said was there since '95, just retired. Right? Yep. Was a mentor as a heavyweight wrestler himself. Bill wrestled for Columbia back in the day. Mentored Mike. We call him Moose, as he's so big. And so Moose came back to Foothill, came back in the wrestling room, is coaching wrestling. And then when Bill retired, Lohman took over as athletic director. So full circle of Foothill wrestling, Foothill athletics is phenomenal. So with that, with Lum retiring, Blood Runneth Orange Wrestling Club has just been stood up this year to help us raise more funds and to be able to do more with the youth.
On that, so the reason we did Blood Runneth Orange Wrestling Club is because it offers a little more freedom for the wrestling team to both fundraise and throw different events. It separates the funding from the Foothill Athletic Student Body Fund. And so it kind of protects those funds a little bit more for the wrestling team and the athletic department. I was voted into the VP position, and specifically, I think I landed. Okay, this is kind of a funny story. So, I sent Mark to a meeting for the Tim Brown tournament. We do meetings probably like every 3 months or so, just to like check in, see where we're at with stuff. And I wasn't feeling good and had a long week, and so I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna like let you go handle this one on your own. And he comes back from the meeting like, we're gonna be co-VPs of the new wrestling club, and I'm like. I should not have you go to that meeting by yourself. And so then, a couple weeks goes by and we get the paperwork and his name's nowhere on the VP line. It's my name.
Just need one signature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, okay, so are you VP or am I VP? Who's in charge here? Because let's just be clear. I'm an A student. Mark used to say he's a C student, but now he says he's a BC student. So I think that's, us averaging out a little bit. And so I think I kind of got put in that position because I helped raise some funds while I was in Vegas. I contacted Randy. They were trying to replace the Tim Brown mat that has the Eagle Globe and Anchor, the Marine Corps emblem with Tim's name on it for the tournament. It was 10 years old at that point, so it was just worn and heavy.
Yep.
And so I went to Randy, who also has a wrestling background, and told him, Tim's story and Mark's story. And they donated enough to cover half the cost of the wrestling mat, which is a pretty substantial amount. And so since then, we've kind of like upticked our involvement in the tournament, and we started helping out by setting up coaches' lunches for the tournament, and we get sponsorship from Raising Cane's and Locos Tacos to cater those lunches for the student volunteers and for the coaches from all of the teams. Um, and then this last year with Lum retiring, who is kind of led up or head up all of the fundraising in the past, he's kind of asked us to take that over because he really does deserve a peaceful retirement. Even though the guy can't retire to save himself, like he's fully retired, but we get emails once a week from him like, hey, how's this going? Hey, how's this? Here's some more people I think we should reach out to. So he's going out kicking and screaming, but we're lucky that he has that passion.
Yeah.
And so we are really working to continue to fundraise for that program. They are launching a middle school program as well. I think you can understand my history with wrestling started in middle school. My brothers all wrestled.
Yep.
That's also kind of the connection that got me hired at Extreme Couture. The coach at or the manager of Extreme Couture when I got hired, his name is John Hahn, and he is also a Marine, but he wrestled with a family that my family wrestled with their children here in Sacramento. And so when we kind of made that connection in my job interview, he kind of did the same thing as Mark and like called his family friends who we call village parents, because they had as many kids as we had. So we'd swap kids to get them to sports on the weekend so that everybody could get where they needed to go. And so that was a wrestling family. I grew up with that family. My brothers wrestled with them all through high school. And then to find that connection in college, like it was kind of like having my uncle there in a city that I moved to where I knew no one. And so Foothill is I went to a different high school. I didn't go to Foothill High School. I went to Del Campo High School in Sacramento or in Fair Oaks. But my brothers competed in the Tim Brown tournament when it was renamed. And so again, those like close proximities to Mark, he was coaching when I was attending those tournaments and being a stat girl and keeping up with the wrestling stats for the team and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we just never kind of crossed paths. But Foothill is an area of Sacramento that 75% of the students attending the school are from minority groups. There are 89% of the families in that area are socioeconomically disadvantaged. There is a very large immigrant population from the Middle East with the conflicts and people escaping those conflicts. So they have a very large population of immigrants in that school. And wrestling is just something, and I think any sort of combative sports it kind of puts together that resilience and the embrace the suck, right? Because anyone that's been in a wrestling room or in a jiu-jitsu class or in a kickboxing class, like it's not fun to get choked out or punched in the face, but you can't help to walk out of those experiences, with those people, and like you leave all that animosity, I get aggression on the mats, or in the ring. But you walk out of there with some very close friends. I have a girlfriend that I fought competitively with, all through high school. She did the Army Reserves and she now is in cybersecurity. But that's a friendship, like we could go months without talking and we get on the phone and it's like we never missed a beat. And those are relationships that I think are forged through that hardship and also that shared struggle of like, we are on a team and that we're going to these events together. But at the end of the day, you're getting in there to compete on your own. It's your own discipline that it makes it or breaks it, whether or not you make weight, right? Like you can come off a loss just like he did and say, well, that sucks, but I know what I need to work on, right? Or look at the competitors that made it and just say they had a better day than me. It was more in line with what they were going for today than it was in for me. And if we hadn't had that loss, it would have kind of changed the trajectory of where we ended up. similar to Mark, I was on track to compete in Junior Olympics at 16, and I broke my hand 2 weeks before the tournament. I was qualified, and I broke my hand during training, and I did everything I could to convince my mom, like, oh, we're just going to soak it up and tape it up, and I'll compete, and then we'll go back and get it recasted. It's no big deal, And I threw quite a big fit that no one would get on board with me with that, because I was like, I've trained all this time for this, and to not go just seems like a waste, but it definitely would have changed the trajectory for me had I, gone that pathway. So everything happens for a reason.
It does
and I think
indeed.
Yeah, so we're just trying to raise more funds for Foothill for the kids. I mean, some of them don't have wrestling shoes.
Yeah.
Wrestling
Yeah.
shoes are going to wrestle. That's what you need, right? Shirts and shorts. You can't just have one
Training
pair,
gear,
right?
yeah.
You got to have training gear. So trying to reach out to more companies, right, and bigger companies. A lot of it, right? Try to stay around local Sacramento people that know the school, but around our area, there's not funding. There's not a lot of money around our school. So reaching out, and I thank my wife when we were watching the show, and she grabbed her laptop. I said, "What are you doing?" She was like, "I'm emailing Coach Kittle."
There you go.
I said, "Good luck," but hey, look at us, and thank you.
There we are. Well, so we'll do. I know we're going to do. I'm kind of investigating some other stuff, but we're going to do $1,000 for the Weed for Wars. We'll do another $1,000 for the Blood Orange, and so we'll do that. And then I've got a couple ideas that I'll chat with Amanda about that I think maybe we can supplement that kind of stuff. So we want to, for sure, at least do that, because we always do $1,000 gift for our guests. I'm assuming those would be the two nonprofits that you'd want to support, I think, or charities, or organizations. So, well, let's wrap. Here's how we like to end. So we're all about creating hope in the world, and you guys have been doing that with all the work you're doing. And so really the name of the podcast is Hidden Pearls. And a lot of that came from the idea that everybody has these hidden pearls within them. And sometimes they're just kind of stuck in the mud a little bit, and we just need a little polish. So what are some of the things, and you don't have to do too much, but just something that's kind of in the midst of all this work and the bureaucracy with the VA and even the suicides that you guys have to cope with, and all that journey, as well as the wrestling stuff, what are maybe a person or an event or something that happened that has given you some hope and renews your belief in our human society?
I've thought a lot about this. I think I've kind of talked to you and like how the universe continues to align us. The hidden pearls for me are definitely the relationships that we've built in going through this pathway, specifically, with Coach Tim bringing me back into martial arts and combative sports with Extreme Couture MMA. And then also MVP kind of coming out of that, and how these things continue to overlap. It's not an easy space to be in when you're in mental health advocacy and helping people through their struggles. I particularly identify as an empath, so it's even harder for me to kind of shuck off some of that weight sometimes, because I want everything to be okay, So especially with Coach Coach lost his battle with mental health. That kind of reinstilled that passion in me, because he was one of the brightest lights I had in terms of leadership. And so it checked me a little bit, because it's like, doesn't matter how bright you are, you can still struggle. But it also gives me more purpose to continue with the pathway, because, Tim would have wanted that.
Right. Okay. All right, Mark, anything?
No, Coach, that's hard. I'm feel like I'm in the rut, or I'm searching for my pearl right now, or what's my new pearl? What do I want to go after? I'm daily trying to work on myself, right? And so I would say just being glad that I'm here, right? I thought I was going to die as a young guy. When I hit 30, I said, "Holy shit, I'm 30 years old. I'm about to hit 40 here in the next year." So it's just living, right? And what is that? I don't know what that means, right? But that's just daily living of doing and taking care of what I need to do, what's in front of me, helping my friends and family.
Yeah. All right. Well, we lifted you guys up as a hidden pearl for the month. So you guys are out there trying to do good and help vets kind of find a pathway, through camaraderie and maybe, alternatives to treatment that may not otherwise be presented. So great thing. And working with the wrestling team, I'm all about that. So that it was very, very formative for me in my upbringing and college years as well. So it's a hard thing to be a part of without it, pretty deeply impacting you. So, and I always think, if you don't get it, you don't get it. It's a little bit like the military, I think, in a way. I mean, if you don't know what it's like to go through the grind of wrestling and all that kind of stuff. And I know there are other sports, it's just not the ones that I know. So, okay. All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it very much.
Wrestlers
And
are a different breed. Wrestlers are a different breed, that's for sure. I always, especially being in the gym at Randy's, I would always say that wrestlers typically made the best fighters because no one really understands what it's like to be in a room when it's 100 degrees and to run, to run in a room that's 100 degrees and then also put somebody else's body heat next to yours when you want nothing else than just space. So it's a different kind of resilience there.
Yeah, there's no doubt. So, okay. Well, wish you guys the best. Let us know about events. If we're in Cali and we can get up and help you guys, we'd love to do that. And then
we got a couple coming here in the next few weeks.
Let me just throw out anyone interested to come watching high school wrestling, some of the best high school wrestling in Northern California, January 10th and 11th, Memorial Auditorium, downtown Sacramento, California.
Okay. Good to know. We'll see what the playoff schedule looks like. All right. So
I hope you guys are busy. Don't worry about it, Coach.
I know. And then you guys are coming to the Dallas game. So we got that all set up, right?
On so that, I just chose that game, right? You said choose a game. I chose that game because of the rivalry, right? Born and raised a Niners fan myself. And then after about 2 days later, I said, hey, you know what? Tim's favorite team was the Cowgirls, the Cowboys. So it was just serendipitous after that. So we're looking forward to it.
Well, there you go. The universe continues to unfold. So anyway, we'll follow up with you guys next week on that one and all the tickets. So, all right, take care. All the best.
Coach, appreciate it. Have a great day.